Today we'll be riding from Tyneham to Exmouth along the Jurassic coast, going through Tyneham, Durdledore, Weymouth, West Bay, Seaton, Bere, Sidmouth, Exmouth and then back up home again. We start our trip in the village of Tyneham. There is evidence to suggest that Tyneham village has been a settlement since the Iron Age. However, just before Christmas in 1943, the village was apprehended by the War Office for use as firing ranges for training troops. 225 people were displaced, hoping one day to return. In 1975, after complaints from the tourists and locals, eventually the MOD reopened the village on certain days and weekends throughout August, although by this point the village was in much disrepair and falling apart. The village features some beautiful buildings and even a original telephone kiosk. The limestone church of St Mary dates back to the 15th century. The village is mentioned in the Domesday Book as Tyneham, meaning goat enclosure. The school was established by Nathaniel Bond in 1860, but unfortunately was later closed due to lack of pupils in 1932. As we head across the top road, travelling back down towards Durdledore, we can look over the military firing ranges and notice the interesting markings on the land. This road can get rather windy depending on the weather conditions, so care should be taken. As we come to the end of the road, we notice there's a lot going on in the field to the right. Apparently, this was actually Bestville Festival, and features such acts as the Wurzels, Fatboy Slim Level 42, even Craig Charles was there. It must have been quite a party. As we pass through the village of West Lulworth, we will see one of the oldest pubs in Dorset on the left-hand side. This pub originates from the 16th century. It's called the Castle Inn. Fantastic building. Also there is the Holy Trinity Parish Church, which was actually moved in 1869, demolished, but the old churchyard still remains. Arriving at Durdledore, I was rather horrified to see that there was actually a paying display car park now. The limestone formation of Durdledore was carved by the sea over the past 160 million years into this dramatic and stunning landscape that you see before you today. Just down there on the right hand side is actually Greenhill Gardens. These were gifted to the inhabitants of Weymouth in 1902 and originally part of the Wilton estate. The first building we come to in Weymouth that's of any interest is St John's Church on the right hand side. It was actually built in 1850. It's actually quite a modern church, but it's a Grade 2 listed building nonetheless. Weymouth features a lovely coastal area with nice beaches. Weymouth has a mix of building styles, including Victorian and Georgian along its promenade. In 1887, to mark the 50th year of Queen Victoria's reign, a multicoloured Jubilee clock was erected on the esplanade, which is that you can see here in front of you. Weymouth originally existed as two settlements, Melcombe Regis and Weymouth. This eventually got brought to an end under the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. She was tired of the petitioning and she united both towns in an Act of Parliament. Since then it's only really been called Weymouth. It was also the first port for the entry of the Black Death in England in June 1348. West Bay is a rather small harbour in comparison to Weymouth, but it's nonetheless quite a beautiful and tranquil place to be. The current harbour, because it had been moved twice since the first incarnations, is actually around 1740. Nowadays it's more of a tourist attraction and fishing place than anything else. It's quite charming, as you can see by the photographs. For motorcyclists it also features a rather good helmet and accessories shop, as well as a good cafe. As we travel down the Jurassic coast, we pop through several nice little villages. This one is called Exmouth. It's notable due to the fact it was left by King Alfred the Great to his youngest son Athelwerd. It was also one of the largest trading ports in the mid-14th century, accounting for 15% of the country's shipping trade. The pizza restaurant on the right-hand side makes very nice pizzas, judging by the smell. First mentioned in 1146 by Pope Eugenius, Seaton is a rather well established seaside town now, mainly due to the arrival of the railway in 1868 and expanding due to tourism. It is now a thriving resort, with all ages considered at heart. Recently had a £200,000 skate park development. Most of the buildings are around the 1930s era, although some older 14th century buildings are still present. A few notable architectural interests are the world's first concrete bridges built over the River Axe in 1877 and the Seaton and Beer Railway Company. Seaton also features a tramway which was originally opened in 1970 and links Seaton with Colliford and Colneyton. Travelling towards Sidmouth on the Jurassic Coast route, you will also travel through Beer. Beer is home to a cave complex known as Beer Quarry Caves, which was originally used to construct 24 cathedrals around the UK, including Westminster Abbey and St Paul's Cathedral. It also features the Pecorama Pleasure Gardens, an interesting attraction and one not to be missed. The Church of St Michael, constructed in 1878, was originally built on the 16th century chapel site. It was built by Mark Roll, who was Lord of the Manor. As we travel through Sidmouth High Street, on the right hand side is the Black Horse pub. This is a beautiful pub, very pale blue, once owned by Dumbledore apparently, and he lived here for about 40 years before eventually moving to Hogwarts. It has a thriving high street also, with quite a few modern shops and boutiques. It's a good way to spend a few hours chilling or shopping on your trip. As you can see, the front features a rather splendid esplanade with Edwardian and Victorian property along the facing side, which reminded me a lot of my hometown of Burnham-on-Sea. As we come out of Sidmouth on the Jurassic Coast route, we climb the spectacular hill, which is good fun on the motorcycle and pushes the revs up, making for a fun, sensational ride. And finally we arrive in Exmouth to complete our trip. Exmouth is a typical Victorian Edwardian seaside resort now. However, back many years ago it was actually occupied by the Romans. Among other notable people in history, St Walter Raleigh also sailed many voyages from Exmouth Harbour. During the 18th century, an awful lot of people came here to convalesce, and it was a place of great escapism from London and the bigger cities. People such as Lady Byron and her daughter Ada Lovelace were here for that exact reason. It was considered fashionable to bathe in the medicinal salt waters. It features a traditional promenade, which became fashionable in Georgian times. The architecture of most buildings is either Georgian, Victorian or Edwardian. Due to the arrival of the railway, most Victorian buildings were constructed during this era. And this concludes our tour of the southwest Jurassic coast. Hope you enjoyed the ride along through all the towns and villages. We will be featuring more along England's coastal lines and inlands in the future. Please subscribe, and hopefully we will see you soon.